Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Angie Huntley, and I am here today with a dear friend of mine, Susan Swanson. And we became connected through our business, actually, through LifeVantage and the business of nutrigenomics. And Susan is just very, very near and dear to my heart, and developing a friendship and a work relationship with her has been a treasure in my life. So I'm excited for you all to get to know her. She resides in Florida, and she's a registered dietitian and has been for her whole adult and career life. And I told her that we wouldn't say how many years because that might allude to her age, and we're not going to do that. But let me just tell you, she is extremely experienced, knowledgeable on the science because it's what she does, and she's well versed and very passionate about what's going on in the human body and the nutrients we give it and how that leads to better health. And so, as you can imagine, nutrigenomics was something that really perked her interest. And I'm excited for you to all hear her story. Welcome, Susan.
Hi, thank you for having me. Yes, it's been quite a few years. I will say I've been a dietitian my entire adult career. So, yeah, we don't need to exactly go
Right.
into the number of
Enough
years,
said.
but it's been a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I've seen a lot of changes from when the research said, "No, don't eat eggs, don't eat eggs." And then it
Yes.
was neutral, and now it's, "Yes, eat eggs." So,
Right.
there's a lot of changes that
Oh,
happen in the
all the
yeah,
back and forth. Yes.
yeah.
That leaves us all so confused all the time. We're told,
I just say everything in moderation, and then I'm always safe.
yeah, yeah. Love it. I love it. Well, it probably back not even quite a year ago, I met you,
Right,
and
right,
you actually had reached out to another colleague of mine because you had seen a product that we were
right.
introducing. And so, will you share a little bit maybe about what perked your
Sure,
interest and
sure.
why you decided to even reach out to the point where you and I were able to have a conversation?
Sure, absolutely. I think it was back in November of last year, actually, and a friend of mine at work who is very interested in losing some weight, talked about this product that she was using. I said, "Well, I'm feeling a bit fluffy. I could stand to lose some weight, and I would never do the injections or anything like that." So I got introduced to your colleague via my friend at work because I was very interested in starting with the Mind Body product. Well, it was funny because at the time, I believe everything was on back order or it was
Yeah.
difficult. It was a challenge because the product had been recently released and it had taken off like gangbusters. So I know you guys knew it was a great product, but I don't think you were prepared for the avalanche of interest. So
Sure.
for me, I did not get in. Well, actually, I said, "Well, I'm really interested." And then your colleague said, "Well, let me introduce you to Angie because she can tell you about all of the products." And that's when I met my sweet friend Angie. And when I was in college, biochemistry was my thing. I was just a biochemical nerd. My senior year, I took a master's class in biochemistry, a graduate class, and there was 5 of us in the class. And the professor looked around and said, "Well, who's pre-med?" And 2 people lifted their hands, and "Who's pre-vet?" 2 people lifted their hands, and then they all looked at me. "Why are you here?" I said, "Because I just love biochemistry." And they just thought I was insane. But once Angie started to talk to me about the chemistry and about the evidence, I was there was no turning back for me then. It was just an amazing product that I had to learn all about.
Awesome. And in this call, we probably, who knows where we'll go. We're going to do a
Right.
series of interviews that encompass Susan's story. And that's really our focus is her incredible health journey. And if you're interested in knowing, because I also really love science, and it's been a lot more self-study for myself. I wish I could say I've been through master's class and biochemistry and all the things because I just do really geek out on that. But through just immense study, you and I had a meeting of the minds and were
Mhm.
able to really, really talk the science and connect that way. And fortunately, with nutrigenomics, there's just an enormous amount of science. And so if you're not aware of it,
There is.
we'll reach out to us and we'll make sure you get the resources to look into the science. But I think, the Mind Body brought you in, which was a
Correct.
nutrigenomic GLP-1 product, because, like you said, you just didn't like being as fluffy as you were.
Right.
And
Correct.
and I wonder on that front, what I didn't know at that point, as I was just sharing the science with you, and you were fascinated and said, "How could I learn more?" What the parts about Susan that I didn't know was your health history. And
Right. Well,
so would you share with us a little bit, maybe first, if we start with in November when you and I talked, like how did you feel day in and
well,
day out with,
then I was just, to be honest with you, I felt overall like a slug. I mean,
mm,
I eat well. I ate well then, and I eat well a little bit too much sometimes, but that's, hey,
that's
um,
good.
right's good.
Yeah.
Um, but I just generally felt sluggish. I didn't have any energy. I wasn't really comfortable in my skin. I wasn't sleeping well, and I didn't have any oomph. And I really needed some kind of oomph at that time. Overall, at that time, I was under the impression that I was still incredibly healthy. So I wasn't under any stress of any medical conditions because everything was
Okay.
going well. You see, I have quite a history with cancer. So, but at
Can you
that time,
You were at that time
cancer free.
cancer free and
Well,
just,
I thought, yeah,
yeah, not feeling awesome, but
right,
there were no red flags in your mind
right,
of
right,
this needs dire attention. And
right.
now if we look at, so that's you felt sluggish, and maybe I think sometimes we have an underlying feeling in our health of, is this as good as I'm supposed to feel? Like, is this
Yeah,
it?
I just felt
Yeah.
generally unwell.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
just didn't feel well, and I said there has to be, there's got to be more. And then
Yeah.
you and I spoke, and it was just amazing because I believe I started with two products with you,
Mhm.
and that was the NRF2 and the collagen, and that was amazing. I My cancer history is so extensive. I was a little nervous about any product, but because of the research and the science and the medical backing of your product, I didn't have any anxiety whatsoever as far as moving forward and taking the products.
Wow. And do you work in a medical system?
I do. I'm a
Okay.
dietitian in long-term care. So I
Okay.
work with elderly people, and of course, I get to see them through their life journey. And when I started to hear about the Life Vantage products, I almost became a little angry
Yeah.
that why hadn't people been introduced to this before?
Yeah.
Why wasn't this mainstreaming? And
Right.
that's something that you and I have spoken about.
Yeah. Me too. That was my first feeling too. I think that's what kind of guided me on the path towards this as a career, because I was angry and then became passionate that people do need to hear about it.
Mhm.
Can you share with us a little bit about you've alluded that there is like a cancer history.
Yeah.
What is your
Well,
cancer history?
well, actually, I was exposed to cancer not personally, not my own physical body when I was a young child because um my father, he died of pancreatic cancer when I was 8. So
Mhm.
that was the very beginning. And then my stepfather, my mom married Perry when I was 13, and he actually was a squamous and basal cell cancer survivor. Perry
Wow.
is Perry is an amazing story in and of himself.
Mhm.
But he was amazing, and I didn't realize it at the time, but he was my first mentor when it
Okay.
came to developing a positive attitude when it came to cancer. Because the doctors, when he was finished with all of his surgeries, told him, "Well, Perry, we think you have about 5 years to live." And he said, "Did you hear from God?" He said, "Because if you didn't, you don't know what you're saying."
Wow.
And he just would not believe it. And he
Yeah.
lived he lived 23 years after that. he died of a heart attack, and the cancer never came back.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
yeah.
Wow.
So
Wow.
he was an amazing mentor to me.
Yeah.
He didn't realize it because none of the cancers hit me until after he had passed. So
Wow.
the first cancer that attacked my body was a melanoma.
Okay.
And for those of you guys who might not know, there's three kinds of skin cancer: basal, squamous, and then melanoma. Melanoma is the deadliest of the three.
Mhm.
And I actually they said at the time it was a stage 4, but it hadn't metastasized. So it was a stage 3, but it was pretty good size, like the size of almost a silver dollar, in between a quarter and a silver dollar. So they did what was called a wide resection of that. And at that point in my mind, I said, well, my first goal was, well, you know what? I just want to outlive my paternal dad. He lived to be 42. That's going to be my first goal. So I went through the next 7 or 8 years and everything was fine. I was doing the scans and everything was great. Now all of a sudden I started getting these colds, they're like bronchitis. And I guess so I went to my doctor and I'd already gone through antibiotics and such. And I said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't breathe. I'm exhausted. So he said, well, I've already put you on antibiotics once. Well, let's do a chest x-ray just to see what it is. And my doctor was a really great guy, and he actually called me himself and said, Susan, pardon my language here, um, Susan, I don't know what the hell this is. He said, I wish you had pneumonia, but this is not pneumonia. And
Wow.
actually, yeah, it ended up, it was a metastatic melanoma in my
Wow.
lung. It
Oh
was,
my
yeah,
gosh.
it was in my lung. And it branched out, and it was kind of like an octopus with the head in my lung and the
Oh,
tentacles going out. And
wow.
so that was not a good situation. I
No?
did have doctors at one particular cancer institute tell me I had 6 to 9 months to live. And I said, no, it's not working for me.
Right.
And they
Carrie
guaranteed,
was in
yeah,
your head.
Carrie was
I
in my
love it.
head.
Love it.
And they said, well, we guarantee you won't find a surgeon.
Wow.
Well, they were wrong. And plus, there was a lot of things that I did to augment my own healing and health at that time. That's another whole long story. But
Yep.
in the end, I did find a surgeon. And
Nice.
when they took it out, they told my mother, they said, we've never seen anything like it. That popped out of her chest like a piece of popcorn. And it was only attached with a vein and an artery. That was it. Now, so that's why I really, and I've told you in the past, anyone's mental attitude when it comes to dealing with cancer is of incredible utmost importance.
Absolutely.
So that was cancer number 2.
Wow.
And then years passed, and I'd always had all my screens and not PET scans, but pap smears and
Yep.
mammograms. And then all of a sudden one year I got the call back that said, your mammogram is not normal. You need to go see your doctor. I'm like, oh no. So went back to the doctor, and then I had to have all kinds of tests. There were 3 nodules in my breast.
Mm.
And because I'd been so clean, everything had been so good,
Yeah.
but I had to have the biopsy, and then that came back breast cancer.
Okay.
So at that time, he said, well, they were small, but there were 3 of them. And because
Okay.
there were multiple tumors, they wanted to do bilateral mastectomy. I didn't have to do chemo. That was an option. So I said, well, they're small, and it didn't appear as though they had spread anywhere. They hadn't metastasized. So we went ahead and just did the bilateral mastectomy.
Okay.
And then actually that was in 2015. And then you have what's called a marker test
Yeah.
in your blood. It gives you an idea of whether or not the cancer is at a safe level or something has happened. And mine went from 30 something to over 200
Oh
for
my.
my breast cancer marker, which is the CA2729.
Okay.
So my doctor called me, and again, then I had to have a PET scan. there were tumors actually in my spine. So, and then when they took the biopsy of that, because they weren't sure if it was the melanoma had come back or if it was the breast cancer, which likely it was the breast cancer because the markers had gone so high.
Right.
And it was metastatic breast cancer. It had metastasized to my spine. So that's when I had to have chemo the first time. So that was
Okay.
in 2017.
Okay. Not that long
So
ago.
not that long ago.
Yeah.
But then let's fast forward to 2025.
Yeah.
So I've been successful in conquering 4 cancers so far. And I felt great. I mean, except for being sluggish and a little fluffy and, but nothing of health concern. But I had a PET scan. I have PET scans every single year because of my history.
Yep.
And then it was January 7th, I had my PET scan, and it came back that there was an area, a tumor on my pancreas,
Okay.
on the tail of my pancreas, which that was pretty devastating. I'll be honest with you. No one likes to hear pancreatic cancer. Well, nobody likes
No.
to hear cancer at all, but
No.
pancreatic cancer is
Is a yeah.
yeah.
It's a
So
different level.
it's a different level,
Yeah.
and it's a very aggressive. And mine is a squamous cell um, cancer, pancreatic cancer, and actually it ended up being a stage 2. So I was very, very grateful that it was a stage 2. So that
Yeah.
brings us to January of this year, and I had already been well. So that's the cancer history. But I
Okay.
have a little bit more of the story, the current story. But
Yes.
let me
Yes.
let you take it for a few minutes.
Yes. So I think what we'll do is because we want to divide this up into shorter excerpts, and I really
Hmm.
wanted in this first one for all of you to get to know Susan and to see a bit of what was coming to this nutrigenomic table. And here is obviously someone so intelligent and very well versed in science and really, when you meet someone who says, they're not feeling their best, they're just feeling sluggish, there's a story there, there's a history there, and there's always mysteries in our bodies, but also the mysteries of when you meet someone and you don't know the whole backstory and the history. And I think Susan's story is more powerful because of the history and what has brought her to this place today. And so before we cut out on this one and we'll lead into the next one, I just want to share one impression too, that when she started on nutrigenomics, and again, I only had this little snapshot, no history in her life. That was November. She didn't have this 5th cancer diagnosis till January. And actually, it makes me think, Susan, of there's one more part of your history that I want you to share because
Oh no.
I think of that phone call that I got, and it'll stick with me forever. It was so sweet. But Susan wanted to share with me how she felt about exercise, because now
Oh,
obviously she has met with lots of doctors, and I knew she was starting to share a little more with me about preventative care and screenings and scans that she was having done, and she wanted me to understand she wanted me to understand how frank she was with her doctors about her feelings on exercise. So can you add a little color
yeah.
to that, Susan?
I will. I just exercise is just not my thing. It never,
Well, it wasn't. It wasn't.
it wasn't, and
Right.
well, it used to be, but then I was at my doctor, and the doctor said, "Well, Susan, how are you doing with your exercise?" I said, "Great, no change at all. I just don't do it." But I will say that about a month into taking the product, I woke up one morning and actually wanted to move.
Yeah.
So there is a lot to talk about. Lot to
Yeah.
talk about here.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that, and we'll
Yeah.
unpack that in our next video that you all will see. But I got that call that day, and Susan shared
It
that
was
with me,
funny.
and she also said to me, she said, I think I used to not feel alive.
Alive.
Yeah.
Yep. I
And
just didn't.
yeah.
And I was starting to feel like my cells were happy. and they
Oh,
had energy and they were energized and they were moving and things were happening the way that they were supposed to. So
yeah.
that's been a really, really exciting journey.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I'm excited to tell you the next talk about the next chapter with everyone.
Yes. All right, you guys, check out chapter 2. Thanks for joining us for chapter 1, and we'll hopefully see you soon.